This is the Live Well and Thrive podcast, hosted by Michael Torchia, health and wellness expert. It's time to shape up, America.
Hi, it's Mike Torchia, and welcome to Live Well and Thrive. I have a very special guest. Her name is Joey House. She's a philanthropist, model, actress. She's got incredible business with combining art and beauty and fashion, and she's got some hell of a story to tell us what it was like to date the rocker Eddie Van Halen. Can't wait to hear these stories. So welcome to the show, Joey.
Thank you so much.
So Joey, what are you doing now?
I'm working on a few different projects. I'm actually working on a few different films and TV shows, but I'm not allowed to talk about them because they're kind of in the beginning of
Sure.
works on those. But I have a healing business that I'm doing also because I do a lot of healing. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, is this like spiritual healing or holistic healing? What is it all about?
So when I was 19, two drunk guys hit me head on in a car accident, and I flatlined and died for 5 minutes. And then I came back, and I didn't want to come back because it was so amazing on the other side. And when I came back, it obviously changed everything for me, and everything I thought was real or how I'd been brought up wasn't, because when you have the experience, everything changed. So then it opened me up to, just being a lot more intuitive and all of that kind of stuff. And so I've helped a lot of people cross over and a lot of people die. And I don't have a fear of death now because it was one of the most beautiful things that actually had happened to me. So I help people that are in that stage where they're, ready to go. And because I don't have fear of death, so I can help them to not have fear as much as possible. And so I help families, and I help a lot of people through grief and trauma and, when they've been through a lot of hard stuff. And that's also with all the fires that have been going on. It's kind of like I'm so empathetic for, just the pain and sadness that everybody and all the loss, because a lot of people don't have skills to deal with stuff like that. So I can, I've helped a lot of people, go through stuff like that, which is super rewarding because, it's a gift I think I have that a lot of people don't. So it's nice to be able to use it.
No, it's absolutely so beautiful to hear what you're doing, the work you're doing, because people need that.
Yeah.
They talk about maybe taking care of themselves or improving their education, but, mentally and emotionally, they need to connect with themselves and understand the value of life, but also know that if you're going to pass away, prepare yourself for moving on to the next place, whatever it may be. Because I remember Wayne Dyer always said, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Exactly.
And that always kept me in this mindset that, yes, someday I will pass on, but spiritually I'll be moving on to wherever it is. So what you're doing is so essential, because people could take care of themselves or neglect themselves, whatever it is, but spiritually, they're confused. They don't know, is there a God? Is there an Allah? Is there Jesus Christ? People kind of lost right now.
Yeah.
Especially after COVID, people have gone bonkers.
Oh, yeah.
So for someone like yourself that your heart stopped for, you said 2 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
And there was no damage to your brain at all?
Well, no, I'm just kidding.
let me ask Eddie.
No, I mean, it was completely transformative. Like I always say, I wish everybody could die and come back because it just changes everything. Like when I came back, I didn't care about money. I didn't care about cars. I didn't care about clothes because I was like, it has no value and it doesn't matter. And I was 19 and all my friends,
Wow.
I came back and I went to school. I was going back to school and everyone's like, you're so cool. You died. You're so badass. You died. And I'm like, yeah, but it's hard to assimilate when you came back because I didn't care about the normal things you'd care about. So for me, I didn't care about a lot of physical things. So for me, I had to kind of retrain myself and say, okay, well, I have to have money because I live in the physical world, but I have to give it different meaning. So I was like, what is money to me? And I was like, money's freedom. And I love freedom and I want freedom and I want to be able to help people. So I want money so I can have freedom to do what I want to do and move and have everything I want and be able to help people. But it wasn't for material reasons. And I feel like a lot of people, if you could have this experience, you really get the value of what's really important in your life. And I think just, like the depth of what matters when you meet people and when you're going through your life, it just changes it because just the superficial stuff doesn't matter. I mean, it's fun and it's kind of like you can play the game and do all that, but it's like at the end of the day, what really matters. And a lot of people don't, they don't know that, and they think that all this external stuff's going to make them happy, and it doesn't. And a lot of people think if I just get a lot of money or I get a bunch of cars or whatever, and we've all had that, not all, but I mean, when you have that, that doesn't make you happy. It's kind of within yourself. So I think when you can kind of do that, then you can just genuinely be happy on the inside, and it doesn't matter externally what's happening or not happening, because you're happy no matter what because you're comfortable within yourself.
So when your heart stopped for those 5 minutes, I know they call it going to the other side.
Yeah.
Can you describe what it was like?
Yeah. I mean, it's a long story, but
No, but like
I'll give you a
just
nutshell.
snapshot. Yeah, snapshot.
Yeah. So I passed out a few times at the accident, and then they brought me in for surgery, and then I was on the operating table, and I was laying on the operating table, and they were doing surgery on me, and while they were doing surgery, I was conscious of being there, and like not visually with my eyes, but I saw myself above myself, and I was laying on the table, and I was like, oh, there you are. And then and then all of a sudden it would flip, and then I'd be above my body, and I was looking at my body in the operating table. Wow. And I was like, there you are. And it kept going back and forth and back and forth. And then all of a sudden, and I was like, oh, this is weird. And then all of a sudden, all my consciousness just went up above, and that's when I died. And I saw my body laying there, and everybody started panicking to bring me back to life. And they were doing everything. And like when you die and you look at your body, it's like an old shoe. Like you could just care less. You're like, oh, that thing, like you have there's no, you don't care. You're not attached to it. And then they were all panicking, and I was like, what are they all worried about? I'm fine. I'm okay. And they're like trying to bring this body back, but I'm okay. And then thought manifests. So I was like, oh, I wonder how my parents are. And all of a sudden I went through walls and whatever, like I just kind of went through different material. And then I went into the waiting room, and my dad was sitting in a blue chair. My mom was in a yellow chair. There was a Gilligan's Island episode on TV. My sister showed up. She had this tan pantsuit on. They were all talking, and the doctor came out, and they had this whole conversation. And they were all really worried and freaked out. And I was really close with them, and I was trying to tell them I was okay. And I was like, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm right here. I'm okay. And they can't hear you or see you, and that's the frustrating thing. So I know when people cross over, like you could be right here, and you know what's going on, but nobody can hear you or see you. So you're like, hello, and you want to, the main thing is you want to ease their pain because you want them to know that you're okay. And so, but they couldn't see me or hear me. And then a few other things happened. Like I went into a children's ward, and I went and visited different things. And then all of a sudden it was like, do you want to come back? It was like this kind of question, like, do you want to come back? And I was like, what? And it was like, do you want to come back? And all of a sudden I got sucked over my body, and I'm looking at my body on the operating table. And it was like this question, like, do you want to go back in? And I looked at my body, and it was like if you had a spoon laying in front of you and somebody said, do you want to be that spoon? Like, what would you say?
No.
Right. So it's literally like, I was like, so all of a sudden I became aware of what I was feeling. And it was like, I just felt my consciousness was so huge. And I was like, all of this knowingness, all of this beingness can't fit in this tight little physical confined thing that feels pain. Like I didn't want to go into the little body because you're all of a sudden expanded. And I felt more love than I've ever felt in my entire life. Like you just feel complete love, but like this love that's like the most beautiful thing you've ever felt. And I felt like I was home. And I don't know whatever anybody wants to call it, but you just feel like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be finally. And it was like as if there was music, but I don't think there was music, but there's light. And it's just like this warm, like I call it like a spiritual orgasm.
Wow.
Because it's like when you're in the middle of having an orgasm, you're like, it's like the best you've ever felt. And it's like, that's how you feel. Like you cry and you're just like, oh, this is so great.
It's heavenly, yeah.
Yeah. And then they're like, do you want to come back in this little thing? And I'm like, no.
Hell no.
Yeah. I was like, why would I do that? And so the question came a few times. And it was like, do you want to go back in? And I was like, And they're like, do you want to go back in? And I was like, And then I go, no. And they're like, do you want to go back in? And I was like, no. And I got sucked back in. And I woke up and I was like, I said no. And I was like, now what? Because now I don't want to be here.
But when you woke up, did you feel the pain?
Um,
Or you were still numb?
I was still numb because I was on, like from all, because they had to do surgery. So I was on pain meds and stuff.
Wow.
So I came out and I was in intensive care and my parents come over and they're like, we're so happy you're here. And I was like, Because I was like, you should go to quadrant 47A and see what goes on over there. Because it was like, but then I went to my parents and I said, I know what happened when I was flatlined and I was dead in the other room. I said, I know everything that went on in the waiting room. And they're like, you couldn't know that. And I go, Dad, you were sitting in the blue chair. Mom was in the yellow chair. Pam came in with the tan pantsuit. This Gilligan's Island episode was on. This is what you talked about. And they're all like, because they're like, how could you know that? And I'm like, because I was there. And I was like, I was going like this and you guys couldn't hear me or see me. But I'm like, you're totally lucid on the other side, whatever you want to call it. And so they were like, wow, this is incredible. And they like, we know it's real because you couldn't have made that up. But they're like, we don't understand it. We can't deal with it. So we're just going to pretend it didn't happen. And I'm like, okay, well, my whole life's changed. So what do I do now? So I just kind of started my own spiritual journey because I was kind of like, everything's different and I needed to make sense of it for me.
Well, I think especially for elderly that at a point where they're going to end up going to hospice and so on.
Yeah.
Everybody prepares for the end. How about preparing the people prior to going there, like having a spiritual coach like you, so they can accept it? Because what happens is they're just laying there miserable, feeling everybody has let go of them.
And fear.
Nobody cares. I'm not loved. And they die a miserable death.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're haunting themselves.
Yeah.
Someone like you can tell them it's okay. Mm-hmm. When it happens, it happens.
And I kind of can teach them, like, it's like I have a whole thing because it's just intuitive. So it's like usually they're just really scared because nobody really knows. You're like, there's this void. And whatever anybody believes, when it really comes down to it, they're still scared because they're like, I'm just going to who knows whereville.
Yeah.
And even if you have beliefs in God or whatever your thing is, or Buddha or anything, people still get scared at the very end because they're like, I'm fine. And then when it comes to it, they're like terrified.
Well, when I was about 8 years old, I was at my grandmother's house with my mom, and it was a Sunday, and we always have the Sunday dinner at my grandmother's house. And as I was a fat kid, so I liked to eat. My grandmother would say, if you're going to eat, you're going to help cook. So I would, cut the basil and help fry the garlic and all that. And while the sauce was cooking, she said, let's go into the living room. We need to tell him. So it's just, my uncles, my father, and my brother was in the porch watching the game, and he said, we need to tell Miguel. I said, what? And she says, the golden spoon. My grandmother had a very Sicilian, had a heavy accent.
I love it when you do the accent.
She says, Miguel, you have the golden spoon. And I said, well, what's that? Well, I'm intuitive. I could feel things. I understand things.
And who's this, your grandma?
My grandmother. And my mother had the same thing. And they said that we've seen you avoid things where the other kids were running around. There was a hole. I knew not to step before seeing the hole. So, and I would tell my mother I saw something before it happened, and I didn't understand it. My mother didn't want to get into it. So when I was 8 years old, she says, you need to understand it because it can be a blessing, but sometimes a curse.
Right.
Because you see things, but you don't understand it. So my grandmother shared with me that I have that gift, and it's like a muscle. You need to train it because then you know how to properly use it.
Yeah.
So throughout life, like when my grandmother was ill and she was in the hospital, I said, we need to go to the hospital now. Okay. And we went there, and we got there, and the doctor came. I was just going to call you. She's about to pass.
You're like, I know.
I know. So my mother and I sat there for 9 hours. I held my grandmother's hand, gave her a pulse. My mother was there, and until I felt the pulse stop. The same thing went with my grandfather, and when he passed, I got there right before he passed away. My uncle, I was the last person to call my uncle because I was in California, and I said, Uncle Sal, you okay? He said, Mikey, it's not good. I'm not going to make it. He says, I can't believe you're going to call me because I was hoping to hear from you. I was the last one he spoke to. And a lot of my other friends, I had another friend that, Rick Drayson, very famous wrestler and bodybuilder. I called him because I was thinking of him, and I said, Rick, what's going on? He said, I only have one kidney. I was born that way. The other kidney, it's not good. I don't have time to get a replacement. It's not good, Mike. I don't know. I said, stay strong, Rick. I'm going to come see you in the hospital. I'm going to get over it as fast as I can. And then he said, okay, I'll call you back. The nurses coming in for a second. They said something wrong with my heart rate. I said, okay, just let them do what they got to do. I called about a half hour later. They said he passed. I was the last one he spoke to. So I started seeing this was a pattern.
Right.
I had to understand, but I had to learn how to respect this. Like also in 2005, I was in a really bad motorcycle accident. I went to Bartell's Harley Davidson, and I bought this badass custom chopper. It cost me $100K. It had like chariot wheels with blades and 300 size tire, long fork. It was badass. I mean, it had a powerful engine. It just roared with those pipes that I had put on. And I was a Saturday.
What color was it?
It was black and chrome.
Oh, gorgeous.
Tricked out. All skulls and things here and there. So I'm driving to go down to Gold's Gym, Venice Beach, and Santa Monica Boulevard. And this guy runs the light. He does what they call California roll. And then, boom, and I went flying over the truck and out. And I was totally out. But right before I hit, I saw the accident happening. But it happened so fast, I couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
But I was cringing like this, and then all of a sudden it happened. It's that fast. I saw everything that happened to me. I was knocked out, and I'm laying there, and then all of a sudden all these people started coming out. And I woke up, and my face was numb. So there was like this LA Weekly box, and I'm trying to see my face to see if I'm okay. And this woman was coming out a laundromat, and she had a basket of clothes. I said, excuse me, miss, is my face okay? She screamed, dropped the basket, ran down the street. So then I go to myself, I'm fucked.
You're like, do I look that good?
I'm fucked. So now, but I saw all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was like a flat. So I know when you shared that with me, I got chills because I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, you see it.
Because you're intuitive also.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I totally dig this. This is something that people need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because to understand it, because then you can prepare them
Yeah.
for the next phase of their life or whatever happens after life, you know?
They always say it's like we're born into this world and everybody's so happy and they birth a baby, but when you die, like it's the same kind of thing. Like you're birthing back to where you came from. So it's actually like a birth going home, and it's really beautiful. But people are so scared that if you can ease that, it could be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you know, like when my mother she was 94 and a half when she passed, and I had gone to Georgia because she was living with my sister, and you know, I was very close to my mom, very, very close.
I can feel it.
And-
You just
and-
when
and-
you talk about her.
The last day I was there, my mother had the oxygen, you know, and she pulled the mask down. She goes, I want chocolate.
Oh.
I said, Ma,
Cacao?
you went to Godiva chocolate. Oh, I love Godiva. I love, the doctor won't let me have it. He says I'm going to die. She goes, I don't understand. I'm going to die. I have a bad heart. I want my chocolate. So I said, okay. So I jump in the car. There was a Whole Foods. I was in Atlanta, you know, where the hospital was. I go in Whole Foods, and they had one bar left of Godiva chocolate.
Oh my, you're like, it's for
I was like,
her.
I gotta get that chocolate. I drove back to the hospital, and then I said, and my mother was so weak, so I said, okay, I got a little bit of water, and I got 2 spoons, and I was mashing it make it like pudding, right?
Chocolate pudding.
And then I put on my mother's lips a little bit, and she's licking it, and then she said, oh. thank you. Thank you. She goes, I need to tell you something. Come over here. And because she had to whisper, I said, yeah, Ma, what? She goes, don't tell your brother and sister, but you were always my favorite.
Oh.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I was like, I turned to her, I go, Ma, I know. And she had this big smile. So then I left. I said, the nurse, let me know if the head nurse, let me know if there's anything, you need. And if you need me, I'm going to come over. And 4 o'clock in the morning, it was 4:08. I got to call my cell phone. And it was the head nurse. And she goes, Michael, your mother's passed. And she goes, I gotta tell you, is anybody else listening? I said, no. She goes, before she passed, I heard her. I was at the desk, the nursing station, and I heard her calling your name, Michael, Michael, Michael. And then I ran in and she flatlined. Oh my God. I was the last person she asked for before her heart stopped.
On purpose.
But again, we were connected.
Yeah.
The golden spoon. So when you're telling me this stuff, this is more things that we need to bring on the show more, and maybe steps that people can take to understand life and death.
Because it's all part of it. It's not like
Yeah.
people aren't going to die. Like everybody's going to, but everybody's so scared and nobody talks about it. And everybody's like some people I've talked to, they go, I'm never going to die. And I'm like, okay. But,
Well, what about
denial,
with that billionaire
Right.
that's spending $2 million, pumping all kinds of son's blood in him, doing the transfusions? He said he's going to live to, 120? Come on. I'd rather live a quality life.
Right.
It's so funny. Sometimes I know it may sound terrible. When I see these guys that hunched over like this, could barely walk, I go to my brother, listen, Vic, if I ever look like that, put a pillow over my head. Put me to
That's what
sleep.
I said, yeah.
I don't want to be living life miserable like that. You know what I mean?
You want aliveness. You want quality of a life. You want to
Right.
feel like vital. And that's, if you're not, then what's the point, kind of?
But like my mother's frame of mind, she's prepared. She goes, I know you're okay. And your sister and brother be okay. She said, I live for you children. And so I knew when she passed, she goes, I'm okay. Because she said to me that day, I'm ready. She goes, I saw your father, his big hand, my father's big hands, reaching out saying, it's okay. It's okay.
So she
told
felt
me,
comforted and
well,
safe.
she was ready. So when she passed, she was like, she just wanted to say the last goodbye. But she couldn't. But I think she knew when she was saying it, I was feeling it because I couldn't sleep. And I was in a lazy boy chair because I couldn't sleep in bed because I was like that. So when the phone rang, I was already awake. So I was kind of feeling that in the universe, So I love what you're doing, and there's something I wish more people would do. Because, if you go to YouTube and all these other platforms, nobody's talking about this stuff. Preparing for the end of your journey. And so you're not driving yourself crazy because, people are obsessed wanting to live 10 years longer or 20 more years longer. They're obsessed about it. How about just preparing yourself to say, I'm going to enjoy life to the fullest. No matter what age I die, I know I had a happy life, but they're so stressed to try to figure, well, if I drink this alkaline water, or I take this green drink, or if I take this injection of peptide, or I do this stem
They
cell.
could walk out in front of a bus.
And get hit by a bus and then...
And they're like, I took my stem cell. Oh, the bus hit me. It's like, you can't, it's like
Yeah.
stuff happens. Or you're in a plane and there's a plane. Like, you can do as much as you can. But for me, it was like... it was so beautiful on the other side. And I actually helped my dad cross over when he died. And it was so beautiful. It was like the most beautiful experience of my life. And I've said to people, I'm like, if you can be there when people you love die, and see the beauty in it, it's so incredible and so touching. And if they're, especially even if they're ready to go, it's like this beautiful thing. And I think people miss that because they're so scared of it or so, that they don't embrace it and they don't accept it. So it's kind of turned into something else.
A lot of times I'd hear like my uncle would say, on Sundays, all the men would go out on the patio and we'd eat cherries and pistachio nuts and we'd talk about life, And it was so funny. I remember one time my uncle said, you don't want to ever die alone. That's why it's always good to have a good woman. This way, when you're about to die, she's by your bedside, your children are by the bedside.
Your dogs.
With the dogs, right? You never want to die alone. And I always impress that upon me that having the loved ones around you are the most important thing, especially when it's towards the end of your life, than anything else. The house, the money, the cars is nothing.
Right.
Right? So the purpose...
Well, it has no value and you can't take it. And when actually, it was interesting because when the car hit me, so I had turned and the guys were drunk on the opposite side of the street coming straight at me. Wow. And it was like I saw the guy's eyes in the car and we're looking at each other and then everything went into slow motion. It was like 20 hours, it seemed like, and it was just like freeze frame. And I just saw the whole thing. But then like his car hit my car, then my car hit other cars, and then we all flew into a house. Like it was so impactful. But the whole thing, it seemed like it just went forever. And I could see like it was like, screenshot. But it's like I saw, and then my whole life flashed before me, and it's like you knew everything and you saw everything. And it was like these freeze frames of like when you were 2 years old and you're 5, like all these images and your family and your loved ones. And it was so like, I was like, whoa. And like when you come out of that, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what matters, like the people in your life and the love and the caring, because it's like when you're going, it's like that's what you see and that's what you feel. You don't go, where's my Ferrari? Yeah. Where's my Porsche? Like, so you don't care about that.
When you were going through recovery, who was there for you?
My family. Oh, yeah. And that was the biggest support.
Well, you look great. What do you do to stay in such great shape?
I'm a Pilates girl. I love doing Pilates. When I do weights sometimes also, and I like doing weights, but I can bulk up a lot and look like a little too big. So I kind of like being lean and long and kind of defined like that. So.
Well, you're very tall, so it kind of goes with your overall symmetry,
Yeah.
And you have a really nice muscle tone, but you still maintain femininity.
Yeah.
Sometimes women can cross over and have more of like a
I was like, I don't want to look like a dude.
No, well, especially today.
I don't want to be dude chick. I want to be chick chick.
So I want to tell you something really funny. I saw that you were in a film, Exit to Eden.
Yeah.
Okay. So Gary Marshall was casting that film. At the time, it was when I was doing some acting when I was younger. And I was up for one of the dominatrix guys and to greet them when they come to the resort to tell them what they'll experience. And it was like 11 pages of dialogue, which I was usually good for 3 or 4 pages. I mainly did commercials. But then they said, Mike, the agent said, this could be an amazing role for you. It's a significant role. You have this long scene. And I did an amazing job. And at that time, I was like 228 pounds. My waist was like 28 inches. I had a 58-inch chest, 20-inch arms. I had hair down to my shoulders. I looked like a perfect guy to play that role.
Oh, yeah.
But the casting director said, you are this character. You're perfect. Look at this body. No one in those days, people have bodies like that.
Yeah.
So they brought me to Gary Marshall, and the 2 producers said, this guy's it. Look at him. He nailed it. He's got that powerful jawline, the muscles, this look in his face. Because, no, he's too distracting because the actor he's talking to is going to get mad that they're looking at him.
He's too good looking compared, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get the role.
Oh.
But who knows, I would have met you then. Yeah, I wanted to get Gary Marshall.
Gary Marshall was like, can you take a whip and beat people? I'm like, sure.
Well, that's how I look at it.
Right, I'm like,
give him a beating.
Right.
Yeah. I'm
like,
Italian.
that's fine.
We're used to it.
Yeah. I'm like, where do you want it?
Yeah, but so you were modeling first, then acting. How did it all come together?
So when I was 17, I started modeling. And there was a guy that found me from Pasadena, and he said, you should model. And I was like, what does that mean? And then he said, well, we should take pictures, and you could model. And then I was like, are you creepy? And then he goes, no, bring your parents. And so my parents went, and we did pictures and everything. And then he said, my first job, it was pretty amazing. He booked me on a Kodak job. And he said, you book Kodak, and he said, you go to Marina Del Rey, you're going to get on a boat, and you're going to go out and shoot in a bikini on a boat for a few hours. And he said, they don't want to pay taxes, so they're going to pay you in cash, and they'll pay you cash and da-da-da. And I go, okay. So my parents brought me, and I put on a black bikini. I go on the boat, and they're shooting. We go out for like 4 hours or something, and we come back in, and they're like, okay, thanks, you're done. And I was like, okay. And then they handed me cash, and it was for the agency and me, but it was like a bag of $30,000.
Wow.
And I was like, what's this for? And they go, for working. And I go, but I didn't do anything. I stood there in a bathing suit. And they were like, yeah, but you're doing the ad campaign, for Kodak. And so that's how it started. And I was like, well, this is great, And so I just started doing it from there. And then I went to Australia and just all over Europe. I lived in Australia for about 9 months. And then I lived in Paris and Milan and just everywhere all over Europe.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And then the thing that kept happening was I'd go up for acting jobs, and like, say you go on an acting job, you go on audition, and then they're like, next week you have a callback, and you go on the callback, and then they're like, next week after that you go to producers, and then next week after that you go to taping or whatever. And so in between I'd always book another job, and I was like, well, I'm getting paid $2,000 a day to go to Fiji for 10 days, or I could stay and go on a callback. And everybody's like, well, go to Fiji for 10 days, So I'd always go to, so it was like the acting, I always kind of had it secondary, because I was making so much money, and it was so fun and traveling. And, my parents, I came from no money. So to me, I was like, I can live and make money and have a life, do all this stuff. So it was really, I just basically lived out of a suitcase for like 15, 20 years. Like I was just on the road.
Yeah,
and it was really amazing.
People think it's so glamorous, but I did that for many years when I was doing the modeling.
Yeah.
Bodybuilder. I was doing trade shows and all that stuff. After a while, I was like sick of traveling. Standing around on a trade show, those long photo shoots. My friends were hanging out, then I've got to go on the road for 2 months.
Right.
And then you kind of miss being home.
Yeah.
And seeing but that you need to do it.
Yeah.
You have a short window.
Right.
Make as much money as you can, and then you could enjoy life later,
Yeah.
Because it isn't fun. Maybe once in a while, but it was all work.
Yeah.
I also had to make sure I didn't have anything high in sodium. I had to be ready for the shoots.
Right.
I couldn't be tired,
Because sometimes you'd fly all night, and then you'd land, and they're like, we're shooting as soon as you land, and you're like, I just got off a plane for 10 hours. But you have to be like on all the time and always look great. But a lot of it's really exhausting, and people don't think that. They're like, you just had this glamorous life. And I'm like, yeah, parts of it, but parts of it, I remember I was shooting in Palm Springs, and it was 120. Wow. And I was in ski gear because they shoot out of season. So when you're wearing a bikini, it's snowing, and when you're in ski gear, it's like 120. So it's 120, and I'm standing there, and they had all these lights, and it was so bright, my eyes were watering, and I couldn't open my eyes, and I was boiling and sweating, and the photographer goes, don't sweat. And I'm in ski gear at 120. I go, don't sweat?
That's impossible.
Goes, yeah, just stop sweating. And I go, you try to not sweat.
How about put a fan on or something, right?
Right. But it's like, it's not, it's
people
don't
think
know
it's
both
so
sides.
it's so glamorous. So now, what point in your life did you meet Eddie Van Halen? How did you meet him?
Oh my God, it's a funny story. So I was dating a musician from Amsterdam, and we were dating, and then one night he said, I'm going to a studio. Do you want to come watch me record? He goes, it's at somebody's house. And I go, okay. So I go, and I'm watching him, and then at 1 a.m, I was like, I'm tired, I'm leaving. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I go out, and I go to get my car, and I forgot my keys. So there's somebody out there, and I go, can you go get my keys? And they go, yeah. And I'm standing there, and I'm cold. And all of a sudden, somebody comes up, and they're in like a hoodie. And you could see like just a hood and a body. And this guy comes up, and he goes, hey. And I go, hey. And he goes, how are you? And I go, fine. And he goes, what are you doing here? And I go, I was watching my boyfriend play music. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, this is my house. And I go, oh, cool. Oh. And he goes, I'm Eddie Van Halen. And I go, and I couldn't even see him. It was like a silhouette with it. And I go, oh, cool. And then he's like, we like talked for 5 minutes, and I'm like, I'm freezing, I'm tired, I'm leaving. Nice to meet you. Bye. So I leave. And then the next day, I'm driving on the freeway, and my phone's ringing, and I go, hello? And he goes, it's Eddie Van Halen. And I'm like, hi. And he goes, I had to get your number. I had to meet you. blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And so we started talking, and I go, well, I have a boyfriend. That's why I was at your house. And I go, so, nice to meet you, but I have a boyfriend. And he goes, oh, that's fine. He goes, we can just be friends. And I go, okay. And so we literally were like really good friends for probably 6 months or 9 months. And then like he finally, like one day he was shaking me and he goes, why won't you go out with me? And then I finally like just broke down because I ended up falling in love with him because he was so incredible. And so finally I was like, okay. But I was like, I don't want to date a rock star. I don't want to deal with groupies. I don't want to deal with drugs. And I was like, this is the last thing I want to do. But he was so incredible. Like he was really deep and spiritual and funny and creative and passionate. Like there was this whole side of him that nobody knew. And his main instrument was piano. So he would play these like incredible ballads, and he played them for his dad's funeral and his mom, and he wrote a 23-minute song for my mom, like when she was dying. And so it was like he was really like a passionate, genuine, incredible person. And, and that's what I fell in love with. And then like the whole rock star part, like I didn't even, like literally when I first met him, I wasn't a Van Halen fan and I didn't really know their music because I was just traveling the world. And so he literally, and I wasn't involved or didn't care about it. And so I was like, I go, well, what do you do? Like what? Like I go, you did a song like jump, I want to jump. And he goes, what do you mean? What do I do? I do it. So he comes and he brought a stack of like videos and he goes, this is me. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I didn't, but I think he liked that because I didn't know and I didn't care. And everybody was after him. And I was like, meh. Like, I was like, like if you're a cool person, but he never had that. So, and I was really real and genuine with him. And he goes, Joey, you're the only person that's real with me. He goes, my doctors lie to me, my friends lie to me, because everybody wanted something from him. And I would tell him the truth. So everybody would talk to him, and like I was kind of his advisor or whatever in just life, because he'd always be like, what do you think? Because I can trust you. You'll just tell me the truth. Because I'd be like, that's shit, And he'd be like, well, nobody else said that. And I go, because they're all kissing your ass and they're all full of shit. So it was like we had this really amazing, genuine relationship.
Now, how long were you with him?
About 7.5 years.
Wow.
But it was like on, off, and rehab and blah, blah, blah life. And, so, but that was kind of the main thing. Like the drugs was the big problem always, so that was kind of the demise of it, because it was hard dealing with that part, obviously. So
yeah, it's a shame. Many of the artists, their downfall was because of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting. He said when he wanted to get sober, nobody would support him in getting sober. So he said he was sober for, it was like 5 months one time, and he went out on stage, and he goes on stage, and it was this huge audience, and he goes out and he announces, and he goes, I just want to say this is my anniversary. I've been sober 5 months. And he thought everybody go, yay, and everybody booed him. Like the whole arena was like, boo, boo, and they're like, drink, 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 drink. And he was like, and the band members came out and brought him a jug of Seagram's, like the bottle jug. And they go, here, chug, chug, chug. And so he like chugged it again. And he goes, and I was back in it again, because he goes, nobody wanted me to, like they love the crazy party guy. And those times and those stories were super fun and amazing. But at a certain point, he's like, I grew out of that, and he goes, I don't want to be still doing that, but that's what everybody wanted.
Well, it's so destructive, and then people see it as, oh, you're a party pooper, you're no fun anymore, because they want to have misery in their life too,
Right.
That they're just miserable. They're trying to camouflage everything and dull their senses because they're not happy with life.
Yeah.
That's why you need to do it. If you're feeling great, enjoying life, why do you need alcohol?
It's like crabs in a box. They're like, bring you back down,
There was one artist that I worked with. It was so funny. He's totally not into drugs or drinking now, but he said when he'd be on stage and he'd have a break, one of his guys would run out and bring him, like a Coca-Cola can. And in the top of the Coca-Cola can, because it has that little edging, he'd have the Coke in there. So then he'd go like this and swig it on stage. And then this way he said it helped him keep playing.
Yeah.
And to the point where, he wasn't sleeping. And that he had this totally really bad blowout and got in an accident. And he never drank or did drugs ever again.
Oh, thank
but
God.
he said, his guys wanted him to do drugs.
Right.
He was more fun. He was too
Right.
serious when he was straight. They worked
Yeah, they're like,
against
you're
him.
carefree, you don't care.
But he eventually realized he had to fire those guys because they weren't helping him, and he'd end up being dead if he continued on that direction, that path.
Yeah.
Because I figured it was probably a wild journey, but also real dark at times, especially when you get to the point of so much drugs. You don't know how bad it could be, and you're on the road, and
Yeah. Well, Eddie also, he said, he goes, I'm scared that if I get sober, I'm not going to be able to play. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, because I'm an artist. And he goes, I've just been so fucked up playing all the time that he goes, if I stop, what if I can't play? And I was like, you can totally play. I go, it's probably just fear. And so one time he was going on stage and he had total stage fright because he was sober. And so they opened the curtains and he had his back to the audience. So everybody they didn't know who he was kind of, because he just, his back was there. And he started playing with his back. First he threw up a couple times behind stage because he was so scared.
Oh, wow.
And then he was like, oh, and then they opened, and then he started playing, and then he slowly, once he got into it, then he okay, and then he turned around to the audience and everybody started cheering. But he was petrified because he said, he hadn't been sober in front of all of those people. And he goes, what if I forget how to play? What if they make fun of me? Because I think when you're high, you don't feel, so you don't care what people think.
Yeah.
So then when he wasn't sober, he started caring. But, it was really interesting because he was always battling that,
Well, I've spoken to a lot of people then that have been in the business and also close to people in the industry, the music industry. And, just like the Beatles. I mean, they were tripping on acid, ecstasy, all kinds of things, and they felt that that helped the creative flows.
Yeah.
Now, I worked with John Tesh, and of course, he's a musician besides being the host of Entertainment Tonight. And, Johnny said, Mike, when I feel I need to get the alpha waves flowing, I get in my car, I put the top down, all the windows down, I put the heat, and I blast it, and I just drive up the coast and feeling the heat hitting my body, but the wind hitting my face. And by the time I come back, I have 2 songs in my head.
So that's his inspiration.
He found ways, and John's very spiritual, so is his wife, Connie Selick.
Yeah.
Very spiritual in the way he nurtures his writing and his alpha waves to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel, just like you being the spiritual coach, if there was someone to help nurture these people, you don't need the drugs. In fact, it would inhibit you.
Right.
It helped stimulate the mind, the body, the soul to connect and come out with maybe the finest music you've ever done. But people feel like a handicap, a disabled feeling if they don't have their drug, they don't have their alcohol.
Yeah.
They feel that they're not going to be in the fun person, the happy person, right?
Right.
And I just think if people had someone like you that can give them that guidance, they don't need that crutch.
Yeah.
In fact, it's inhibiting their growth. They think they have beautiful writing abilities when they're high. How about when you connect with the universe, spiritually, mostly, physically?
Or even nature. It's like you just, what inspires you? I mean, Eddie was actually really spiritual. He would call me sometimes and he's like, I'm going to sleep. And he goes, I'll see you in our dreams. And I was like, okay. I go, what does that mean? And he goes, well, I'm going to be green. And he goes, what color are you going to be? And I'm like, I'll be yellow. But I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, okay. And then I'd go to sleep that night and I'd dream and there would be this green ball that showed up in my dreams. And then in the morning, he's like, did you see me? And I'm like, oh my God. And he goes, I saw yellow. And so there was this amazing connection, that stuff that it was just so beautiful. But that was a lot of, he said his inspiration for songs and stuff. He would connect to his father and he loved his father a lot. And a lot of that was inspiration. But I think he said to me he wouldn't trust himself because the people around him wouldn't let him because of all the peer pressure and stuff.
Sure.
But he said when he felt whole and one and content, then that was the best space he would ever be in.
Have you ever thought of writing a book?
Somebody just asked me to, yeah. So I've just.
But I think your whole journey is incredible and inspirational, and I think if you do a series of books where it talks about how you evolved into this kind of wellness, spiritual coach or advisor, whatever it is, then you can have the different phases that people have in life where you can deal with anything. Like, for instance, with the fires.
Right.
People feel like, oh, my God, I almost died.
Right.
Or my loved one died or whatever. How do you deal with that? You know, it helps
Yeah.
you recover from most horrific situations, or helps you prepare if there ever is a situation like that, you
Yeah.
know? I think people really need to read more instead of relying on the visual. Read books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, reading is really, you know, like when you read or you write, you retain that information. I really think people got to get back to the old school way of writing letters to people, not sending an
Yeah.
email, right? Your mind gets more stimulated than just, now everybody's doing chat GPT, so.
Right. They're like, it's not even their own thoughts.
This is a
anyhow.
message, create a letter for me, please. You know, I mean,
Well, I got some letters at the holidays from friends that mail cards for holidays.
Isn't that
and
great?
It was so nice and warm. I was like, oh, it feels so much better than a text. You know?
it means a lot, you know, and I just think that when someone takes the time to write a letter to you or send a card and write a personal note, it's better than any expensive gift you can send me or whatever you want to, you know, a beautiful, funny little thing popping out of a box, some kind of like AI thing, you know, an email, you know, they have that greeting card,
Oh,
e-card,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I just even, you know, call me up and say, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? That's more to me than going through the process of doing that app to send an e-card. You know?
Yeah.
So impersonal.
I agree.
You know, I think technology is great and it really helps in certain areas. But when it comes to interaction with humans,
It's also very isolating because you're not interacting with humans. It's like they're just text and they're not real. You know, and you're kind of, it's not like you're feeling a person.
well, it's like for instance, whenever I get a card for whether it's a friend or a love interest, whatever, I go through the cards, the color, the way it feels, what it says in there, and then I always do my little emotional expression in there, right? And it's so important that you do. And it was so funny. It was a Christmas one year. I was dating this lovely young lady, man, and we really had this beautiful connection. And there was a local little stationery store. And about 3 weeks before, I went and got a Christmas card for her, right? And I know she was getting Christmas cards and things from me. And Christmas Day, she gave me, you know, my gifts, and she gave me the card, and I gave her my gifts and my card. And I said, okay, let's open our cards at the same time. We opened up the cards. We gave each other the same card. Exact card. And she got it at a store that was like by her job.
Right. Like, over
Not
there,
even
you're
like the same store. It was
Right.
pretty crazy.
simpatico.
But you know what was great? We had this connection. Like she wouldn't have to say anything. I could figure out what she's thinking in her
See,
mind.
that's the best.
Right,
But you
right.
have that intuitive thing, which is.
Yeah. But it was so funny to get, I'm opening the card, she's opening the card, I go, holy shit, it's the same
What
card.
if you wrote the exact same things?
No, I'm very romantic. I really get into it. I like to write poems, you know. You know, I'm just that way, you know. And I like to be, you know, share my heart into my writing. So, but it was so funny to see the same card. I just looked at it and I go, oh, that's an ultimate connection,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But not together anymore. But
I'm like, why did it end? Sounds so great.
you know, shit happens. It's just, even though you may have this connection, you know, it's like, remember when Harry Met Sally movie with Billy Crystal?
Yeah.
And he goes, listen, if you don't take her to the airport, don't take her to the airport, because then 3 months later when you don't take her, but you should take me to the airport.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's the 3 month good behavior,
Yeah.
and then you really see if their feelings are true.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so, it's like a sort of a test,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I just think that maybe people had some special connection, but they were both growing and moving on. And
In different
and
directions.
they have
probably.
different priorities and so
Yeah.
on. But, you know, my problem was too, I was traveling with actors. I traveled with Al Pacino for a long time, Matt Damon, and then Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. And I said just traveling all over the work. Kevin Spacey for like 3 years. All these actors, getting them ready for movies. Roseanne Barr, Sinbad, you know, Kim Cattrall for Sex and the City. So I was Van Sant for Sopranos, you know. So I was traveling all the time. So I'd meet someone and then have a great connection. Then I had to go, and then they're like,
Bye.
"Hey,
You're like, love you, bye.
you
Gotta
know,
go.
I was in Paris with Matt for like 5 months, and then we were in Berlin for 2 months, and then we're in Prague for a month. And the girl I was dating was like, "Hey, what do I do?"
Could you bring her ever?
No, I don't like doing that because the studio would have frowned upon it.
Oh.
Because they love the fact that I was just focused on,
Oh, yeah.
and most of the time when I'm training an actor, they want me to kind of babysit them, especially when I was training Matt Damon for the Born and Eddie. I was hanging out with him and Johnny Depp and everybody when they would show up on the weekends and
Yeah.
party because Johnny was in Paris and we'd go to the clubs and stuff, and I had to keep an eye on him, make sure he'd get home.
Right.
You know,
Like you
so
have to
a
shoot.
little babysitter there, And then when I was training Kevin Spacey for American Beauty, he was getting death threats from this woman that was obsessed with him. And that's another crazy story.
I'm like, those are good stories.
No. Well, our next interview, we'll share
We'll
our
be story
stories.
sharing.
Because we got plenty of stories I'm
Oh
sure
my
we can
God,
share.
yeah.
But I want to thank you for coming on. I know it was last minute. I appreciate you really making the time, short notice like this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so I definitely want you to come back and we can talk about some more cool stuff. And I hope you do a book. And if you do, I want to be the first one to promote it on the show because I love your energy. I love everything you're doing. And I truly feel that especially now people need your guidance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, do you have a website or?
Yeah, I have joeyhousehealing.com.
Okay.
And I'm just putting it together. And then on the bottom of my website now, I have 3 different charities that I put on for the fires.
Oh, wow.
So if people want to donate for the firemen or animal shelters and different things, so I just put that on too. Because I have so much compassion for what those people are going through. Everybody needs help right now. So
Well,
if
thank you for
people-
doing that.
Yeah.
And so what we'll do is when it gets posted, I'll make sure we put those links for you.
Okay.
So this way they can reach out to help donate towards those causes and
Yeah.
hopefully get your guidance,
Yeah.
So
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We truly need your support. So subscribe and share this episode if you have anybody you care about. It's important. This story that we share today together, Joey and I, multiple stories, could change your life forever. Thank you for watching.